meat is really just the carnivore diet helps you gain muscle, helps you lose fat, and it's just an amazing diet that God has given us to improve and keep our bodies healthy. And what I also tell people is I kind of look at things, and I have this view just on life, but especially for food is it a net positive, is it net neutral, or net negative? I'm gonna eat meat because it's net positive. It's got the fuel, the structure, and the nutrition, right? I might eat something that's net neutral, or do something that's net neutral that isn't necessarily bad or isn't necessarily good for you. But like maybe some soda every once in a while, diet soda. I don't really drink soda, but that's kind of net neutral, can be if it's one. But then net negative, why would I eat a vegetable or a salad that has all these carbs, has all these pesticides, has all these estrogenic molecules that are just bad for my body? I'm not going to do that to myself. And when you eat something like that, then it can really hinder your nutritional gains. And so I've never really ever wanted that.
See, most people don't even think about any of that. They just think, because I was doing a thing when I was doing all the keto, I had a little slogan, what's in it for me? So everything that I cooked or everything that I ate, I would ask myself the question, what's in it for me? So when I was making a soup or a stew or any kind of dish, it'd be like, what can I put in it? So, lots of parsley, fresh basil, and I just had a list of all the nutrients that they were famous for. But realizing too, going back to the Bible, is that when the flood came, the earth is completely different than it was then. And when the flood came, do you have anything on that, like what it did to the soil? And
well, yeah. So before the flood, and we won't necessarily go into the hardcore science of this, but before the flood, there was more oxygen, and the presence of more oxygen can actually drastically change the composition of plants and animals. And so following the flood, there was less oxygen in the atmosphere. And following the flood, we would hunt animals, and there were carnivorous animals and omnivorous animals and herbivores and whatnot. And so plants really started to develop these defenses, which, because plants can't move, they're rooted right there. That's what a plant is. They would have to have pesticides that they naturally produce in order to ward off insects or animals or something like that. And so we have that and that's not evolution.
Right.
That's not macro evolution. That's micro evolution. It's adaptation. It's not adding genetic material. So it's perfectly biblical and perfectly sound. However, animals can run away. So they're not going to, naturally adapt to have these pesticides on them. Obviously some frogs have poisonous sweat or whatever they have, but a cow can run away, and cows have horns, and so their meat and what they are is not tainted by that, but plants are. And plants and fruits are sweet. They need to be sweet so that things eat them, and the seeds are not able to be digested, and that just exits the animal, and so they need to be eaten. So they're sweet and sugary because that's just the natural way that they need to survive. So it's adapting after that great flood. I'm not really sure about like soil composition or anything like that, but
well, it's a well-known fact that the nutrients are not there anymore in the soil because of the way, especially here in the United States, the way we farm. They have to either add it in, and many times the same crop is grown. You can go to Iowa. What is it? Iowa has the corn. You know, so usually different states are famous. Idaho for potatoes, so they're farming those over and over.
So yeah, no, definitely regenerative farming. A lot of people just keep growing and growing and growing, and it takes all these nutrients out of the soil. So my great grandfather actually had a farm in Grandma and Grandpa Moody, Hoosman. That's it. Yeah, goodness, too many names. But in Indiana, so. But they had 1,000 acres of corn.
Wow.
However, each year they would have 100 of those acres be coffee, because that plant specifically puts nutrients back in the ground.
Oh.
And so they would keep switching and switching and switching. And if you don't do that, like most of these big industrial farms do, or don't do rather, then they're gonna take all those nutrients out of the soil, and that can actually contribute to a higher amount of CO2 in the air.
Yeah.
You see, when you have regenerative farming, or really ranching, because obviously carnivores, you want to have ranching, what happens is you have a herd of, whether that be cattle or sheep or whatever. They'll graze in one area, and they'll poop, and because they're heavy animals, they'll till up the soil, and then they'll move to another area. But you don't keep them there long enough to tear the plants and grass out of the ground. So then they'll go to another pasture. What'll happen in that area that they just were is, one, they'll get new growth because it's fertilized, and it's broken up. And so, one, you'll get new growth, but two, you'll also get the ground absorbs more CO2. So all these people are talking about global warming and things like that. Going on a vegan diet and having these industrial farms is not going to solve the problem. We can decrease the amounts of CO2 from actually having more cattle and just doing it in a smart way.
Not the conventional, because the conventional cattle, the conventional way of growing it is totally different. I mean, they are up to their knees in fecal matter, and all their waste, and they're given corn to eat and grains, which is not a natural thing for them.
Yep.
So all that considered, it's a mess. I mean, I have a friend that lived on a farm that when she was younger, and her parents were not farmers, but they bought a farm and started doing it. And she tells me about how she had to transport the urine down to the cows, make sure this went, and it was such a messy, stinky job. So I don't know. They didn't do anything right, her parents. She looks back on it now, and she says they just weren't farmers. But I went to a ranch, and it was so clean. It was just so neat. Yeah. It was just like you said. They just move them from pasture to pasture, and they might supplement with some hay. They'll give them hay and supplement in the winter because the grass isn't growing.
Yeah.
But it's such a natural thing to do, and buying local is good. But just trying to do your diet on vegetables, especially if you're eating regular, ordinary vegetables from the grocery store, if they're not organically grown, they're full of pesticides and herbicides.
And you've also got to think, we're in the United States, right? A lot of people are like, okay, you need bananas for potassium. Okay, fine. If you think that, then go ahead and eat a banana. However, if you think that's better for the environment than me getting a ribeye steak from down the road, you're very wrong, because they have to grow that banana, near the equator, and then they have to ship it all the way here using preservatives and whatnot. They have to ship it all the way here, and then it gets to you.
Well, they pick it when it's green.
Exactly. And so it's not a natural process. If you're going to eat vegetables, fine, that's your own decision, but it's not better for, well, one, you, and two, the environment. So if you're doing it for that reason, that's not a good reason at all. And so realistically, it's just not a good thing.
Well, everybody that I've watched on YouTube and read about, they all start out with they're just going to do it for a month or a week, and they stick with it, and that's just what happened to us. We said we're going to do it for a week went by. I did go off it for 2 or 3 days and added some vegetables back into the diet, but I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to go ahead and give it another shot. And so after a month, it was like, you know, we're hooked. And not to say that we won't ever eat anything. I mean, to us, going off is having a salad. We'll go out to eat, and, you know, you pay for a meal. And so we'll get a Caesar salad, you know, with no croutons. But, and then we'll have our meat, and they all look at us, well, you want potato? You want this vegetable? Yeah. No, we just want the meat. Yeah. So it was nice. We went to Olive Garden. And the waitress was really great. She said, well, you know, I'm not going to charge you for a whole meal. She says, I'm just going to charge you for, you know, all the meat a la carte. And then we did get the salad. So she brought a salad. We shared the salad, and we had a wonderful. I think we had salmon that day over there at the Olive Garden. So that was nice because we thought, well, what are we going to eat there? We got a gift card, and so it worked out really good because we were able to eat there. But
yeah, sometimes it's hard going out to eat. It
is. Yeah. And I know I've heard other people on the internet that say it can be expensive to go out to eat because they're eating 2 and 3 burgers or 2 steaks. But I couldn't eat all that. I mean, you know, even tonight, you know, I mean, I eat more than I normally do. But, you know, 1 steak is usually enough. And then if you do have a salad or something on the side. But, you know, it was really great talking to you, and I could be here all night. And I didn't get my questions that I had, but I think I covered a lot of stuff. And I just appreciate this, and we'll have you again. And I can't wait to interview your parents because your dad's at type 1 diabetic. And
just a real quick thing on him. Sure, he you know, when we originally started this whole keto carnivore thing, I think his A1C was just over 7, maybe just under 7. And that's not good. A normal human is just under 6.
What was his?
Just over 7.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so and he's been a diabetic for a long time, so he's kind of been able to control it very well. But you know, ever since going on keto and carnivore, his A1C, I think the last time was 6.2, 6.3, which is amazing for a diabetic. But then another thing, just, you know, all glory to God for this and for us finding this diet. He had a lot of like scar tissue on the back of his retina, and that's just because of, you know, type 1 diabetes that'll happen because of insulin and whatnot. But when he went on carnivore, he got told that he had that scarring tissue right before he went on carnivore. Went on carnivore. Next time he went into the eye doctor, completely gone.
Wow.
Completely gone. And so really this carnivore diet is just regenerative. It's amazing for your body, and it's really like hitting just a restart switch. You know, you give your body new life.
Well, if you're doing intermittent fasting, which you were saying you don't eat till noon, we usually don't eat until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Sometimes we'll eat at noon. You know, I make bone broth, and so we'll have bone broth maybe at 10:30, 11 o'clock. But sometimes we just don't eat all day long, and we'll be like 2 o'clock, and we'll say, well, it's almost dinner time. Let's just wait. So we're not eating. But because of autophagy. Have you run into that? You know.
Yeah.
And that's like what clears up all that.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, any kind of things going on in the body, that the dead proteins in the cells that are failing.
Well, yeah. So when you do intermittent fasting, and a lot of the times, you know, I'll do intermittent fasting, and then maybe once every other week I'll fast for a good 24 to 36, maybe even 48 hours. And you get into that autophagy, I think around 24 hours when you're fasting, and that clears out a lot of the proteins, and really it's just a cleanse for your body, because when you fast and when you're in ketosis when you're fasting, It's not like, just not eating like a survival situation. It's not like that at all. It's your body is starting to use your fat, and your body is starting to cleanse itself. And so when it does that, it has great health benefits. I've noticed that when I fast for a long time and afterwards, I actually perform much better into like a 16-hour fast. My run times are much better by 10, 15, 20 seconds for a mile, 2 mile.
Wow.
And so overall, it's just a good thing. And I would highly suggest intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's a better fuel, and I was saying to somebody, we're Rolls Royces or Bentleys, our bodies. We're fearfully and wonderfully made, and so if you got a Pinto, you can just throw. I don't know, maybe you don't know what a Pinto is, but if you got just a cheap car, you can put just whatever gasoline you want in it. But if you have a Bentley or a Rolls Royce, you do not put regular unleaded gas in it. You need premium gas in it. You know what I mean? So why people do that to themselves, because we're just fed a lie. And I think this whole food industry, it's like follow the money, and it's in all these cheap cereals, high fructose corn syrup, and putting sugars and everything, and when you read about what some of the fillers are that they put, in them, I don't even want to mention some of the fillers that they use, and it's really scary. And then you see kids, eating these things. Formula, they put more vitamins in animal food than they do in the formula. Yeah. It's crazy.
Realistically, if you can't pronounce it, you should probably not be eating it.
That's the truth. That is the truth. Yeah. Well, it's been great, and like I said, we could go all night long. Thank you very much, William, and we will have you over again.
I look forward to it.
We'll be great buddies.
With his girlfriend.
And you gotta bring your girlfriend.
With my
Is she way in Tucson?
Yeah, she's down in Tucson.
Oh
yeah,
boy!
Going to community college.
When your folks move up here, it'll be a little easier.
Yeah, it will.
So, all right, well, great. Well, thank you again.
It's my pleasure.
And God bless. All right, here we go.